Morning, Ted.
Good morning, Bill.
I know you're familiar with all of these targets, very much so. So what do you make of Chris Bowen's pledge to commit Australia to reducing our carbon emissions by having a range of between 62 and 70% by 2035?
Bill, I think it's probably the most brazen attempt that I've seen yet of just ideological madness on the part of Labor. And the big issue is you cannot achieve this without the most massive intervention from government. And it is going to cost literally hundreds of billions of dollars. And for all the talk yesterday, the Treasurer releasing Treasury modelling, the Climate Change Authority releasing their modelling, no one can tell us how much is it going to cost. And this is, for me, the single biggest issue. If Australians are being denied access to the real cost, then they need to be smelling a rat. And that's exactly what this is. This is just going to be absolute economic vandalism. And so I think there's a long way for this to play, but we have to fight. We have to fight this. And we've got to fight it on the grounds of economics, because we've got to stand up for the 27 million Australians who live in this country who are going to pay the price of this ideological madness.
Is it, as been described, as I said, as a New Year's resolution, the target itself, is it an achievable target, considering all things, including the economics?
No, I don't think it is, unless you're going to collapse the Australian economy. I mean, if you can always decarbonise to that extent if you close down major industry. There's no doubt about it. You can do it that way. But who honestly wants to do that? We just become poorer and weaker as an economy. I think the reference to setting a New Year's resolution of weight loss is a cracker, because it's true, right? And so if you go back, this government set its New Year's resolution on climate change reduction 4 years ago. So they came to office, they won the Australian government, and they said, we're going to reduce emissions. And emissions had been reduced by 28%, right? 28%, they came to government. Now, in their fourth year, guess how much it's gone down? Nothing. Still at 28%. So they made this enormous claim, just like you do at a New Year's resolution. So I'm going to lose weight. They haven't lost any weight. And now they're making an even bigger claim. Now, if it was just talk, well, shame on them and we can all get on with our lives. But it's not just talk. It's not just a false promise. They are going to be pouring in hundreds of billions of dollars, and it is going to affect everybody who's in Australia. So whether because you're a taxpayer and therefore they're going to use your money, your savings in superannuation, they'll be using that money, or if you're a consumer, prices will go up on everything, especially on energy, and that impacts everything else in the economy. So I think this is economic vandalism, and if the government was true to its word, saying, we believe this is good for the economy, then why won't they release the cost?
It's a fair point, because I know prior to the last election, Coalition copped a lot of criticism for not, they wanted costings on nuclear, but at the same time, they'd never provided fundamental costings for the renewable side of it as well. And energy experts have rubbished the claim that renewables are going to slash $1,000 a year from power bills again. So the federal government isn't being honest about this, are they? And particularly when it comes to this massive transition.
They're not being honest. And I think it's partly because they've gotten away with lying previously. So if you do think of the last election, right, they told a blatant lie about the Coalition's nuclear plan. That nuclear plan was going to cost around about $120 billion. Labor claimed it was going to be $600 billion. And they ran that line and they got away with it. They won the election. And, when it's human nature, right? If you think of if a child gets away with just telling a bald-faced lie, well, they're just going to tell another one and another one and another one. This is what it is today. So they have built this target of emissions reduction for 2035 on the false premise that the rest of the world is going to reach net zero by 2050. That's not going to happen. No one honestly believes that's going to happen. The rest of the world is going to achieve net zero by 2050. Garbage. But that's what the Australian government is assuming. The government is also assuming they will achieve their 2030 target of 43% reduction. No one believes they're going to achieve their 2030 target. They're still stuck at 28%. It hasn't budged now in their fourth year. So that's another dishonesty, a false premise. And then they honestly believe that they're going to, quadruple wind capacity. You're going to have 6 times the amount of utility storage, another 4,000 kilometres in just the next 10 years of transmission lines. It is quite extraordinary. So I think this is based on rubbish economics, and the fact they will not tell the Australian people how much it costs goes to their credibility. But they're locking Australia in, and that just means we're going to become poorer and weaker, Bill, which is why we have to fight this.
How do you fight it? How people have said the same thing. The text lines lit up whenever we talk about this. How is it fought? What's the coalition's stance or policy on this? We don't know that. We've heard debate on policy, whether it's Susan Lee, Andrew Hastie's been outspoken, Barnaby Joyce wants net zero dropped. Where does the coalition stand, and how does the man and woman in the street, how do we fight it?
So when it comes to the coalition, we had a shadow cabinet meeting yesterday. I proposed in that meeting that we publicly and officially oppose Labor's 2035 target. And that was accepted. Also, that we...
What about net zero?
Well, we didn't get to net zero because net zero is the 2050 target.
Okay.
And so yesterday when we met, we completely focused on the 2035 because that's what the government has come out with.
Yep.
And we also agreed that we would not be supporting the legislation if the government brings this into the parliament to legislate. No, we would oppose that. And so we certainly have made it very clear on the 2035. And then as part of the next, months ahead, we've got to be finalising our energy policy. And so, what role is there going to be for nuclear and for gas and for renewables, all of that sort of thing. And so Dan Tehan's doing that as the shadow for energy. He's in the US at the moment looking at nuclear energy. So I can assure you we're not letting go of that.
So nuclear is still on the table, part of the equation?
Absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely it is. And, you and I have spoken about that before, and my views have not changed. Doesn't mean the policy itself doesn't change, and that's what we're reviewing, saying, well, okay, what parts of the policy need to change? But if we want to decarbonise Australia, then you have to have nuclear in the mix. That doesn't change at all. But, of course, you've got the left-wing government that believes you only need one source of energy, which is renewables. And they're going further than any other country, which is why we're paying among the highest electricity prices in the world today, and it will get worse. And this junk economic modelling they put out yesterday saying prices are going to come down by $1,000 for your household bill. Garbage. We've seen that movie before, right? They promised that $275 reduction in household power bills, but bills have gone up by $1,300. I mean, this is just junk economics from an ideological government, so we have to fight it. But on the 2050, there's more debate to be had, and I think that's a healthy thing, Bill. I know there's been a lot of media lately about, Liberal Party, where do you stand, different MPs having different views. My personal take on this is this debate is a healthy one. You never hear about it from the Labor Party because it's command and control. Whatever Anthony Albanese says, everyone has to shut up in the Labor Party. The Liberal Party, the LNP, we're completely different. We have robust debate, and we're not shy of that. And I think that's a good thing because the only way you get good policy is if you're prepared to have robust debate. And you learn from each other, and that's what we're doing. And I know a lot of people sort of look at it and go, oh, you guys are all talking, different things. But we've publicly said this is part of the debate so we can land on the right policy. So I'm actually not concerned at all about people expressing different views on this topic, Bill, in the party, because we are going through that process of debate. Let the debate be had, which is also why your program and others are so important too, because listeners will ring in and will give you their view. That's exactly what should be happening in a liberal democracy. You do not get that from the Labor Party, ever. They are not interested in debate. It is central command control, and we see it through these 2035 targets announced yesterday. This is big government, master planning, Australia. Everyone else has to get out of the way. That's not the way it should be done.
If you were setting a target, what would the coalition target be? Because this idea of setting a range isn't new. In fact, Labor criticised it when the coalition ran with one in the 2010s.
Well, they did criticise it, and, typical Labor, candidly, is just full of hypocrisy. Now they've got a range, so whatever. My main criticism is not that they've got a range. My main criticism is it's going to cost hundreds of billions of dollars. They have not denied that, but they will not confirm what the cost is. But as for us, Bill, as we move forward, we should not be setting a target from opposition. That's what Labor did. That's how they came up with their 2030 target, again, based on junk economics. You don't, in opposition, start setting targets because you'd just be making it up, because you just do not have access to the data and the departments to try to be setting targets like that. I mean, ultimately, any targets one sets has to account for the economy. So what would be the impact on households, businesses, regional Australia? It has to account for our national security, including our energy security, our sovereign capability, and it would have to account for pragmatic policies. And the most important part of that is the role of technologies. And they're the sorts of factors that should be taken into account to say, okay, our broader vision is, yes, we need to decarbonise, but most importantly, we need an Australia which is rich, which is strong and fiercely independent. And if that's our future vision for our country, you have to get energy right. And it's with that mindset and with those criteria that you establish targets, but you only do it from government, not from opposition.
Really appreciate your time, Ted. Nice to talk again.